Don't bowl a tough ball on me, okay?
That's a pretty impressive CV you've got there. So you're a lover of cricket?
I'm a lover of life. Nobody in India ever forgets what happened here in 1983. It's Kapil Dev's captaincy. Well, it's not a game, it's a religion.
We don't get enough sun in London.
That's the reason why you guys went all over the world.
We should have a chat with the groundsman here at Lord. Let's talk about your motorcycle ride.
Now you're coming to life.
Are you looking forward to it?
When I sit on the motorcycle, I'll be just looking straight forward.
Are you pushing this challenge a bit too far? Yoga meditation. Do you recommend I do it?
Oh, you must do it.
That is the most frightening thing.
Particularly to retired cricketers, I'm very compassionate.
Good day everyone and welcome to Lord's Cricket Ground in London. I'm Angus Fraser, the former Middlesex and England cricketer. I played cricket for England in the 1990s, and for those of you that follow cricket, I was the bowler at the boat at Sachin Tendulkar when he pushed me for three through extra cover to score his first international 100. That was at Manchester in 1990.
Oh, really?
So I suppose that's
So
one
you
of my...
got that 100 out of you?
He did, yes. Today I have to give him the pleasure and the honour of asking Sadhguru, who along with being a yogi, mystic and visionary, is an environmentalist and one of the most influential people in our times. So pleased to meet you.
Good morning to you, Angus.
How are you?
Don't bowl a tough ball on me, okay?
I won't. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
That's a pretty impressive CV you've got there.
I don't read those things, so I'm okay.
Good. Welcome to Lord's Cricket Ground and welcome to London. And thank you for joining me this morning. Have you been to Lord's before?
No, it's really nice to be here. We heard so much about this. I would like a fairway like this.
You've been playing a bit of golf then, whilst in London. What do you think of it? We'll hopefully show you around the pavilion in a little while too, to sort of get a taste of the history of the place.
Well, yeah, in terms of history and what's happened here, and in many ways, the evolution of the cricket game is around these places. In that sense, it's important. Well, the modern stadiums are much bigger and many things happening, but, well, the significance is the past. I hope it inspires the game in the future, because I hear that the English fans have all shifted to football.
There's a movement there. There's still a core of cricket fans, but yeah, football is the number one sport over here. But cricket is obviously, I mean, huge in India, that's for sure. I noticed you were in Tiga last week with two great cricketing legends.
Oh, yes.
Viv Richards and Ian Botham. Did you enjoy their company?
Very much. It's always, some time ago, when I was having a conversation with Chris Gale in India, so he asked me, Sadhguru, who is your greatest cricketer? I said, Vivian Richards, of course. He said, how can you say that? I thought you will say Chris Gale. I said, you're not a cricketer, you're like a gladiator, you're a warrior, you go like,
So Viv Richards was one of your heroes then?
Oh, always. I thought there was a kind of a special touch to his game which has been rarely seen.
So you're a lover of cricket?
I'm a lover of life. Cricket is coming as a part of it. I don't get I don't get time in the last 25–30 years to watch much cricket. This Antigua match that I went to, where the English and the West Indies were playing, I'm sitting in a test match after 48 years, and with Viv Richards and Ian Botham.
And did they give you any tips?
Huh?
Did they give you any tips?
No tips.
I mean, to say, obviously been aware of cricket. What would you say, just sticking on the cricket theme for a little while, your sort of greatest memories of watching India play cricket?
Well, nobody in India ever forgets what happened here in 1983. How can we forget that? I played golf with Kapil.
Right.
So, that moment was one of the biggest turning points for India's cricket. I think since then, India has been playing a completely different kind of game. I think it's Kapil Dev's captaincy which kind of a docile Indian cricket team to a more aggressive, wanting to win kind of thing. Otherwise, we played and we are happy we played well, and that's the kind of attitude they had. It's only after 1983, I think, India wants to win. And since then, many great captains have come, like Saurav Ganguly took it to another level of aggression and MS Dhoni, of course, brought a totally different kind of game, and of course, our Virat Kohli, again, a very aggressive, winning kind of captains. These things have happened only after 1983. Before that, we were a very docile, just wanting to be there kind of team.
Well, I always remember actually I retired in 2002 and was a journalist for 7 years with the Independent newspaper. And one of the greatest games of cricket I ever witnessed was the one-day international that took place here when India chased down over 300 runs. I think Yuvraj Singh and Mohammad Kaif got runs in that game. And Saurav Ganguly took his shirt off on the balcony and waved it around.
Yes.
But what sort of role does cricket play in, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to spend quite a bit of time in India, but what sort of role does cricket play in the lives of people in India? We hear lots of stories about the fanatical support.
Well, it's not a game, it's a religion. So, it fires the people to extreme emotions in many ways, and probably for variety of, for the poorer class in the country, there are many difficulties in villages and small towns, economic struggles and daily hardships. I think cricket is one of the biggest reliefs that they find once they sit in the cricket ground or they watch it on the television, millions of people. I think everything is forgotten. I see young people, old people, all, like old ladies over 80, 85 years of age sitting and glued to the televisions and watching and screaming like children. It's fantastic that way.
Really brings a country together, you get the feeling.
Definitely does. Apart from that, country coming together is one thing. But what is more important is people who have never played a game in their lives, they don't know what it means to be on a sporting field. In some way, without physically being there, they go through the joys and pains of that game in a beautiful way.
And just briefly on London, how long have you been in London? I mean, thank you for coming to Lord's as part of your trip to London, and we'll talk about what's starting next week. But how long have you been in London?
Now I've been here for 4 days now. So, it's been good, lots of meetings and…
Who have you been meeting?
Mainly meeting lawmakers, a few journalists and various group of influencers. The idea is, these 100 days we want to change the narrative on the planet towards soil. We want 3 to 4 billion people to talk about soil. So, in that context, we are moving that. And another aspect is, we are looking for a friendly policy towards soil in all the nations. So, through Commonwealth, through United Nations agencies where we have partnerships with them, we are seeing how to bring about soil-friendly policies in every nation, because that time has come. If we don't do this now, we will be a generation of deep regret. So, we are trying to move in that direction.
Yes, so moving on to, I say, the real thrust of the reason why you're here and the Safe Soil campaign that you've started and you're hoping to, well, and definitely will sort of promote with this cycle ride that we'll talk about in a little while. Can you explain what you mean by saving soil and why do we need to enrich it for those of us… Myself, I just thought soil was soil, but having read about what you're doing in the last couple of days, you realise there's far much more to it than that.
See, unfortunately, in today's world, unfortunately, people are thinking soil is some inert material, that you can add some chemicals to it and make food grow out of that. First of all, for the younger generation, because many of them think food grows in the supermarket or food comes through Amazon or some other, app through which they get their food. No, food grows only in soil. Everything that you know as life only has come out of soil. Whether it's a worm, insect, bird, animal, tree, man, woman, every one of us have only come out from the soil. We must get this now, that we are a consequence of what's happening in the soil. We as a life is a consequence of the complex activity that's happening in the soil. It's a living soil. So the idea that it's a living soil itself is not there in most people's minds. So, bringing this context to people's lives and also bringing this to the administrations and policymakers is very important, because I have been in interactions with various agricultural departments, ministries around the world. Most nations are treating soil as inert substance, that they can add this and that and make it work. That's not how it is. Today, people know that your very body is 60% microbial activity, only 40% is your parental genetics. 60%.
Really?
Yes, you're 60% just microbes.
Don't know what to make of that.
So the same is true with the soil. What is happening in the soil is what's happening in our body. And we know today without the gut microbiome, you can't even digest the food that you eat. You cannot get the nutrients that you need. The same is true in the soil. The plant life cannot get the nourishment that they need without exchanging carbon sugars with the microbes, otherwise they won't give. It's a marketplace, a very sophisticated marketplace. So keeping it alive is a fundamental responsibility towards future generations, because unless the soil organic content is a minimum of 3 to 6%, the life will not happen there. To what extent means if you take a handful of soil, there is nearly 10 billion organisms in one handful of soil. That is the level of aliveness that is there. But that is going down significantly. Significantly means according to UNFAO, 27,000 species of organisms are going extinct per year. I'll repeat that because most people won't understand this. 27,000 species, not organisms, are going extinct every year. At this rate, in another 30 to 40 years, we will reach a place where we cannot regenerate the soil. If you want to regenerate the soil at that time, it will take 150 to 200 years. You know what kind of disaster that is. But today, if we attempt it, in the next 10 to 15 years, 20 years, we can definitely make a significant turnaround. That's why this time is very important.
Well, that's frightening. I mean, this ground holds 30,000 people, so 27,000 would fill this ground. How do we enrich soil then? How do we enrich soil naturally?
See, if you take sand and add organic content to it, it becomes soil over a period of time. If you take soil and take all the organic content out, it'll become sand. This is called as a desertification process, which is the biggest problem right now in the world. The world is slowly turning into a dry desert because organic content is missing in the agricultural soil. What happened? A farm means naturally there was trees and animals and stuff. Now we've all gone into monoculture, our farms are shaved clean, nothing. Only machines, there are no animals, there are no plants. See, people may think there are many technologies. Yes, there are many technologies to enhance application, but organic content comes only from the green litter, from the trees and other vegetative matter and the animal waste. There is simply no other way. There is just simply no other way. This is something that everybody must understand. We are trying to grow food without any animals, without any vegetative matter. After 25 years of farming on a land, it's finished. It's turning into a desert.
And it was the sort of you noticing that, I mean, there were the predictions, wasn't there, that was it 60% of Tamil Nadu would become desert?
That was in '98. Somebody made a prediction. Then I went around to check it and I found it could happen much sooner than what they predicted, and it is true.
And that sort of kick-started your interest
Yes.
and study of that. I mean, I'll touch on that in a little while, but I mean, the sort of effects that soil degradation has on people's lives. Could you tell me how that affects people?
One thing is nourishment levels. It has been found most vegetables have very degraded levels of nourishment today compared to what it was a century ago. a century ago, that is in early 20th century, if you ate a certain vegetable, how much nourishment it gave you. Today, most of the vegetables have only 10% of that. If you ate in 1920, if you ate one orange, what you got out of it, today you have to eat 8 oranges to get the same. So this is why everybody is popping pills all the time. And pharmacies which sell vitamins and other kinds of supplements, they are growing like anything as if they are food shops. Some of the pharmacies in United States is as big as food malls, massive, because everybody is buying heaps of supplements, otherwise the food is not enough. But what you get from a supplement and what you get from food are two different things. It's not the same. The quality of it is not the same, absorption levels are not the same, and the consequence is not the same.
Well, it's quite a frightening sort of… Are you sort of saying that we're getting a small percentage of the nutrients that we used to get out of food? That means we need to eat more, which means we're putting more demand on.
See, the tendency to eat more is only because there is not enough nutrients in it. Body demands more food because it's not enough.
So again, we're sort of almost in this cycle where we're hastening the sort of degradation of the soils because we're expecting more of them to feed…
See, one thing is loss of nourishment, another thing is every responsible scientist in the world is pointing out that by 2045, we will be producing 40% less food than what we are producing right now. And our populations will be well over 9 billion. That's not a world you want to live in.
No.
That's not a world where you want to leave your children and go, for sure. But that's what we're creating. So it is no more some faraway reality, it is in our lives. 2045 is not too far away. World Food Program, the UN World Food Program clearly saying that by 2035, there could be dozens of civil wars around the world due to food shortages. Already, in the last 50 years, there have been 30 wars in Africa. In these 30 wars, 27 wars were fought to acquire fertile lands because desertification is serious. In the last 35 to 40 years, the desert has moved or occupied at least 10% more land in Africa than what it was 40 years ago. 10% more desert. If you can just see it in the Google map, if you see, from both sides, north-south, desert is encroaching into the central part, which is green.
A lot of this sort of, I said, looking at my research, goes back to your sort of Project Green Hands, doesn't it? And the work you did there and the introduction of agroforestry, and the fact that encouraging farmers to change the way that they… or the crops that they produce away from the fields that sort of had mechanical machines back to a sort of more plant fruit-based… I say tree fruit-based way of farming.
See, the important thing is this, on an agricultural field, trying to get organic material from elsewhere and transporting it and bringing it, it'll never be enough for the field. So this is why we encourage farmers to convert 10% of their land into trees and animals, so that it will fertilize the remaining 90%. That 90% today is producing far more than the whole 100% was producing. So, you use the word agroforestry, we started with that actually, but now we change the terminology because if you use the word agroforestry, you will come under the forest ministry, which is full of restrictions.
Right.
So we change the term to tree-based agriculture.
Right, yeah.
So now we are under the agricultural ministry, so there are many things to do. So we have worked hard to make many policy changes because without policy change, we could not facilitate this. It took years to make that happen. So with the necessary policy changes happen, now there are subsidies for tree growing, that a farmer gets growth-related subsidy over 4 years. All he has to do is take a picture of the tree that is growing and post it on their government website. Within a few hours, money will drop into his bank account.
I mean, I suppose that's one way of changing the attitudes of farmers by rewarding them financially, but…
Without remuneration, it will not work.
But so, I mean, it must have been difficult.
As far as I'm concerned, when I go to a farmer, never once will I ever speak about ecology environment, saving the world. No, that's not his business. We're only talking about how to enhance his economics. That's all it is about. But it can be done in such a way you can hugely enhance his income, at the same time do wonders for his soil. Whoever taught you that you can destroy the soil and do good farming, profitable farming? Where did this idea come from?
So, I mean, but changing the views of the farmers must have been a real challenge because they'd have been farming in a certain way for hundreds of years, or dozens of years.
Uh, Dozens of years, I wouldn't say hundreds because earlier they were doing it the right
Yeah.
way. Changing the views of the farmers is not going to happen by preaching, teaching, lecturing, no. It will only happen by setting up economic demonstration of how it will benefit. So this is what we did. In various regions, we set up a few farmers whose land changes drastically because of the way they farm. When others see he's making more money, everybody wants to change. All that they need is a little hand-holding to change. But in the interim period of first 2 to 3 years where there could be certain loss of income, if the government pitches in and gives a little bit of subsidies, which is graduated or calibrated for that period, then very easily we can do it. That's what has happened in some of the states in India. Other states are still going slow, but they've done because the budgets needed for this are not large by the government. As the government budgets go, it is not large at all, with very minimal thing. The basic thing is ignorance and lack of commitment. It is not really a money issue.
Is it a healthier diet for the people that live in these areas? The fact that they are potentially eating fruit rather than the wheats and rye?
No, the trees are not always fruit-bearing trees. See, today, those who have converted, let's say, 15 to 20% of their land into trees, but they're still growing the other crops. On the digital market, they can sell their tree in the third or fourth year. Every year, as they take pictures of the growth, they
Right.
get paid for that. The tree will be cut after 15 years.
Right.
But already they're being paid for the growth of the tree. But when they cut it, they will get that money. Approximately we can say this, every 12 years, they will get that much money which they would only get if they sell the land. So every 12 years, they sell the land and keep the land.
And the Save Soil initiative that you've got, I mean, that is strongly based again about putting trees in these…
No.
in these…
That is not the only thing. See, we have made soil documents now for every country, depending upon the latitudinal position. The soil types, we have identified 14 types of soil, and the economic conditions of a given nation and agricultural traditions. Why I'm particularly mentioning agricultural traditions is, even if you have all the science that you want, you cannot change agricultural traditions overnight. You have to respect that and work with that. So for every nation, we have made a separate policy document which we will be presenting to your government also here. And also, we are addressing the COP15 in Ivory Coast in the month of May, where 170 nations have their representatives. There we will present it to all of them. And UN agencies, UNCCD is very much with this process. So we are quite confident it will move in that direction. Well, different nations may move at different pace, depending on the severity of the problem that they are facing right now, or the level of awareness, or the commitment of the leadership for such causes. And we are also writing to over 730 political parties in the world, because we want every political party, whether they're right, left or center, to make soil and ecology part of their political manifestos.
And success, what does success look like, or what would you like to think that success looks like if this all… everything that you're looking to do happen?
When you're marshalling a very large, let's say a ship, you don't just go like this and make a U-turn, it'll capsize. If you make a 1 degree change and hold, it will make a U-turn after some time. So that's all we are asking for. All we are asking for from every nation is just commit that if you own agricultural land, you must strive towards keeping the soil organic content at least minimum 3 to 6%. So if right now, what is the percentage? In Northern Europe, it is around 2%, which is very bad for a temperate land. In Southern Europe, it is around 1.2%. 62% of India's land is below 0.5%. That's a disaster. In United States, at least 30% of the land has completely lost its topsoil. This is where we are. So, if you give incentives that today we can check your soil organic content, if you get it to 4%, we will give you a certain amount of incentive. But that incentive is only an encouragement, because the moment it becomes 4 to 6%, you will see the input cost of the agriculture will start going down. You need to use less fertilizer, less everything. So input cost going down is a profit for the farmer. Profit for the farmer is most important. As everybody must have heard of this, in India in the last 20 years, around 300,000 farmers have committed suicide. People think this is only in India. This is not true. In United States, the highest amount of suicides among any profession is among the farming community. And in the last 12 years, 50% of the US farmers have not seen a single dollar of profit.
I mean, you mentioned that the sort of 50% of the topsoil in America has disappeared. Where does that go? Is it flushed away in rivers and things?
These are prairies, these are grasslands. If you plow large tracts of land, today machines are plowing anywhere between 12 to 14 inches deep. It's in the first 15 inches that most of the life exists. If you plow it like this and open to sun, life is gone out of it. Topsoil is topsoil only because of its aliveness.
Right.
That aliveness is gone. And there are strong winds. You've heard of the dust bowl in 1930s. I was in New York City and they were saying, yes, Sadhguru, some millions of tons of soil or dust settled in New York City. And that's a big news. I said, see, you're only talking about the dust or the soil that settled in New York City because the building stopped it, all right? But have you ever thought how many millions of tons of soil has gone into Atlantic Ocean?
Well, yes, and the rivers and being blown away.
No, I'm saying if New York City stopped millions of tons because of its buildings…
Right, yes.
What was not stopped?
Yes.
All went into Atlantic. You can't even measure what it is, nobody can. But the dust bowls rose in such a way at that time. Now they've controlled it a little bit, but the loss has happened. We can bring it back. The simple thing is there must be some kind of vegetation, it's not only trees. See, right now in UK, about 2 months ago, we've been pushing this in the international fora. 2 months ago, they made a law that there will be some kind of remuneration for the farmers for cover crops during summer or winter, whenever a particular land needs it. When the land is not in use, you must keep it covered with some crop which will enhance the land's capability to produce. Instead of that, we are plowing it and leaving it open to the sun. That is death for the microbial life.
And what sort of reaction are you getting from the politicians, the governments that you're speaking to as you travel around the world, raising this issue?
See, in the last 2 years, I've been speaking to so many people, politicians, leaders, influencers, scientists. I have not found one person who says this is not needed. And what I'm seeing is everybody knows what's the problem, at least people who are in responsible positions. They all know what's the problem. Generally, they also know what is the direction of the solution. They may not know the details of the solution, but they know the direction of the solution. When I look at this, what I see is everybody knows what's the problem, everybody knows what's the solution. I think they were just waiting for an idiot to come and bell the cat. Here I am. What to do?
I'd be a bit kinder than that. I mean, just looking back at some of the other initiatives you've had, Rally for Rivers and Calvary Calling, water and the importance of rivers seems a very important part of sort of directing your interests and passions. Is it sort of watching the effects of I suppose what a lot of life is around rivers, isn't it? And therefore it's starkest, I suppose.
See, this is the issue right now. This keyhole vision of everything. People think air, water, soil, this, that, these are all different things. These are not different things. The very atmosphere you're living in is because of the soil, in the sense, scientists say some million years ago or maybe a billion years ago, when there was no photosynthesis on this planet, the oxygen content in this atmosphere was just a shade over 1%. That means you and me cannot be on this planet. Most of the complex life forms you see here could not be. All those lives which breathe with proper lungs, they could not be here. But today, your oxygen content is around 21%. That's why we are here. How did this happen? It's the fantastic miracle of photosynthesis, which means using the perpetual energy of the sun. I know you don't have perpetual sun out here.
Well, if you look behind us here at that machine on the ground there, that's because we don't get enough sun in London, and that they've got lamps there that sort of hopefully make the grass grow a bit better.
That's the reason why you guys went all over the world looking for the sun.
Well, it's quite fresh out here, isn't it?
So, using the perpetual energy from the sun, the plant material started manufacturing food, which is carbon sugars. And today, there are a lot of online warriors, online scientists. If you utter the word carbon, they think it's poison. They need to understand we are all carbon life. You, me, a blade of grass, the tree, the animal, everything is carbon life. So what you're calling as life is a certain chain, carbon chain or carbon cycle which is going on. So in this cycle, the most important entity is soil. That chain link is becoming very thin and weak. If it breaks, the whole chain could collapse. So, the whole movement is to strengthen that, because without the soil being strong, life process in the carbon cycle cannot continue. So the interest is not about water, soil, this, that, it's about life. If life has to be well, soil has to be rich, water has to be clean, air has to be pure, these things will not happen separately. They're all one happening. For example, see, living in temperate climates, most of the water that you get here in the rivers may be melting ice, not entirely, but to a large extent it could be. But in tropical lands, there is no melting ice anywhere. So where is the water coming from to the rivers? For example, in India, our monsoons last somewhere between 70 to 95 days in the year. These 95 days of water that came down in the form of rain has to flow for 365 days. So where is it stored? It is a soil. If the soil is organically rich, it has an immense capacity to hold water. The soil can hold 8 times more, that means 800% more water than all the rivers on the planet. That is the capacity of the soil. But right now, as it becomes more and more barren, less and less organic content, its ability to hold water is gone, so flooding is happening. If you go into a tropical forest or a rainforest and see, you will see water will be in tiny particles, it'll be dripping from the root systems and various places. These tiny particles become small rivulets, these rivulets become streams, streams become rivers. By the time you come to the plains, when you see, you can't believe this came from those tiny drops, such a huge river is going on. But if it has to flow, 365 days, organic content has to be very rich. For example, in agricultural soil, if you raise the organic content to 8 to 10%, your irrigation requirement would come down to 30% of what you're doing, even in your Lord's cricket field, I'm saying. If you really raise the organic content of this, the irrigation requirement would come down dramatically. If you raise it to 12 to 15%, your irrigation requirement would come down to 10 to 15% of what you need right now. So, water is held in the soil. Without soil, there'll be no water. What is it that's happened in the desert? It rains, but where is the water? It's all gone because it doesn't hold.
It sounds like you should have a chat with the groundsman here at Lord's after you finish with me. But it is
He
fascinating.
thinks he will think I'm having a conspiracy to beat the English team.
But it is fascinating because, I mean, working closely with the groundsman here, Cole McDermott, and how when they put a lot of tap water or sort of from the mains water on the ground, and it's nowhere near as good as the rain that comes out of the sky. So when it is raining, there is so much more, as you said, nutrients and minerals within that water.
Are they putting tap water?
Well, it'd be from the mains, yes. So when they're
chlorinated water.
Yeah, from the sprinkler system.
Chlorinated water.
Well, they have got some wells here. They've got a well here, so they may well be getting
better. Chlorinated water is not good.
It's not, and during the summer, and it's very noticeable is the fact that whenever they can, they leave the covers off, even though they've got to sort of balance the fact that we've got to play cricket in a couple of days. But it's just because the water that comes from the sky provides so many more better nutrients and is better for the grass.
The pitch is totally green.
It is. Well, we're not due to start for another 3 weeks. Middlesex, my county, we're playing here on the 7th of April, but you'll be, I don't know where you'll be there, but you'll be somewhere else in Europe. But at the moment it looks green. At the end of the summer it looks pretty tired and barren out there after all the cricket that's been played on it.
They haven't yet rolled the place, is it?
They will be. They've started the rolling, but and that'll increase over the next few years. I mean, you said earlier that the situation is retrievable.
Yes.
In what period? I mean, obviously, action is as you're sort of pushing for is needed now. But what period of time? How long is it going to take to sort of get us back to some sort of situation that is healthy?
See, if we go in a very docile way, when I say docile way, the simplest thing is to put cover crops on all lands. In tropical lands, in summers, in temperate lands, just before the winter, if you put cover crops, in 6 to 8 years' time, you could have 3 to 4% organic content. But if you want to go aggressively, then in 18 months' time, you can have 3 to 6% organic content.
And
it's just a question of how much money you're willing to spend on it.
And in sort of barren desert areas, where…
See, right now Saudi Arabia is converting proper desert into very rich agricultural lands. But that will cost millions and maybe billions and billions of dollars, okay? They have the money to do it and they know for the future they must do it. They're doing a massive job of converting desert where they can produce vegetables and fruits and things like this. It's working very well, but that's an immense cost. That's not a cost that most nations will be able to bear. But I'm saying even that can be done. But what people do not know is, around 8 to 10,000 years ago, Saudi Arabia was a rainforest.
Really?
Yes.
Well, let's talk about your motorcycle ride, starting on Monday at Trafalgar Square.
Now you're coming to life.
Why motorcycle? You have a love for motorcycles?
It's not like that, that's what people keep on interpreting, because I think they all do things that they like to do. I've made my life in such a way, whatever I do, I make sure I like it. So why motorcycle? Why, early on, at one point in my life, for almost 4 to 5 years, I literally lived on a motorcycle. I crisscrossed India on a motorcycle. But after that, for 32 years I had not sat on a motorcycle. I never thought of one too. But when I was doing the Rally for Rivers, when I got to Bangalore, in that region people knew about my motorcycling because people were fascinated for the riding that I was doing, one end of the country to another at that time. They said, "Sadhguru, you're not riding, why don't you ride?" And they brought one motorcycle. I was wondering after 32 years, can I really ride? I sat on the motorcycle and then I saw I had not lost a day. Since then, I've been traveling only on a motorcycle, last 4 years. Yes, even long distances I'm doing on a motorcycle. That can happen to you with cricket.
No, no, I'll have to lose a bit of weight before. I think that age has gone past me there. You can get a new, better bike, but not a new, better body, unfortunately. Well, that's my theory, I'm sure. Have you got a good bike? I mean, you're doing 100 days, is the cycle ride, going to 24 countries around Europe and then across the subcontinent back to India, and 30,000 miles. So it's an enormous commitment. Have you got a good bike? Is it all going to be on the same bike?
It is good. Just now the company has announced that their main strut that holds the chassis together, there is some problem and there's a recall. In the next 1 week, they're allowing a replacement, but I'm already on the road. So I hope it holds up and spares are not available, whatever. But it is a very good bike, no problem about that. I'm sure it'll hold up.
I mean, you're looking very healthy and well, but it's physically going to be very demanding. Have you been doing some training?
No training where I'm just busy in continuously sitting in meetings endlessly. I'm not even getting to walk or exercise a bit. So, probably this is a kind of an advertisement for a yogic back and a yogic head.
And you leave London on Monday, and how many, well, obviously how many miles are you looking to do a day? I mean, it says 300 miles a day if you're doing 30.
No, because many days we are in the same city with lots of meetings.
Yeah.
So, on an average, we may be doing somewhere around 440 to 450 kilometers, if you take it as an average. But there are days where I'm doing over 800 kilometers.
That's going to be challenging, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Are you looking forward to it?
When I sit on the motorcycle, I'll be just looking straight forward, for sure.
A lot of time for contemplation.
Not really, that's something it's hard for me to explain this. It looks like I'm countering everything that people say. But people ask me, Sadhguru, what are you thinking when you're riding? I said, why will I think? I just ride.
There were some beautiful places that you drive through, weren't there? There's some miserable places as well, and there'll be some good weather and bad weather. So, are you well prepared for all different sort of circumstances?
Well, I'm in northern Europe where some parts it's still snowing. Icy roads are not good for two wheels, you know.
Well, be careful.
Yes. So, there's sub-zero temperatures and now there is a war in the region. So when I hit Arabian deserts, it's around 38 to 40 degrees. Then I'm entering India at the peak of Indian monsoon. So I'm getting the whole works.
I know we all want to challenge yourself, but are you pushing this challenge a bit too far?
This is not to challenge myself. I'm not in that state of mind or in that stage of life where I have to prove anything. I thought before I'm too old and no good for anything, this one thing must happen, because if this doesn't happen, we will become a generation of deep regret in another 20-25 years. I don't want to be that. I want to make sure what we can do, we must do. What we cannot do, we cannot do anyway. But what we can do, we must do. If we do not do what we can do, we are a disastrous life. So, this is an effort to inspire the world. This is not a protest. This is not against anybody. This is not against fertilizer company. This is not against pesticide company. This is not against oil company. This is not against anybody. Because I'm particularly saying this, because if you say anything environmental, okay, whom shall we punch in the face? We are all culprits in this, every one of us. As a generation, we have used things, all right? As a generation, we can also fix it. So this is a generational responsibility. This is not about fighting with somebody. We want everybody who's participated, all of us have consumed. Now all of us can do the necessary compensatory action. But compensatory action does not mean you have to do something right now. In a democratic country, the most important thing is your voice. Because in a democratic country, the most important currency is numbers. People should speak. People have never spoken their concern for long-term anything. They are asking for trinkets, governments are throwing trinkets at them, because after all, it's people's mandate that they have to fulfill. So people have to speak to make governments comfortable enough to invest long-term. This is what the movement is about.
Yes, I mean, it's very far from being confrontational. It's a passive movement, and you're just, as I say, looking for 3.5 billion people to sort of, I say it's a people movement, isn't it? In the way that you're trying to get them to put pressure on governments.
Not even putting pressure. See, I'm saying the government doesn't even know people want this. They don't know.
Just to make them aware.
Yes.
And right, as you might have gathered, I don't do yoga. Just sort of looking at me, you've probably got that sort of, the way that I'm
No, I
sitting
can teach you yoga where you don't have to bend and twist. Just sitting you can do.
Yoga meditation. Do you recommend I do it? And if I were, where would I start?
You must do it because doesn't matter who you are, what stage of life you are, who does not need to look at how to enhance the life that we are? Everybody should. So you can start with inner engineering. There's a simple process, I can ask them to offer it to you. You can start there with a simple online program so that you don't have to meet that highly intimidating yoga teacher. Start online in your own home and understand what it is about and then take the next step.
I think that is the most frightening thing. It is there just
Yeah, I'm
being,
very compassionate.
being there in a room with
Particularly
someone.
to retired cricketers, I'm very compassionate.
No, that is the intimidating thing. It's sort of trying to do something that you know you're useless at.
No, this is not physically challenging that way. It is not twisting and turning as people think it is, no. Yoga is not about looking like a leftover noodle, no.
It's about a state of mind as well.
It is about enhancing life. We are calling it inner engineering.
Yeah.
To engineer yourself in such a way that you can function with least amount of friction within yourself.
That sounds good. There's a bit of friction in my body at times. Sadhguru, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you here at Lord's. Thank you for sparing us some time. Good luck with your motorcycle journey, and good luck with the Save Soil campaign.
You must
that
have the cricketing fraternity around the world to speak about soil. All I am asking is, these 100 days, you don't have to support me. 100 days from March 21st, everybody talk about soil. We'll aggregate those numbers and put it to the governments that people want it.
Well, soil is a huge thing. I mean, in cricket, all we talk about are the pitches, the quality of the pitches, and they produce the best sort of cricket. So, soil is what cricket is played on.
Please, in your community, across the world, please activate them to say something because each one of them have millions of following. They must speak, not for me, for the soil, for the humanity, for the life on this planet.
Sadhguru, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.